8 seconds. Leon?
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Lay the hammer down hard on
Yes.
it. Just like crush it.
There we go.
Shock it. There you go.
Commissioner Starkey, I see you in the back of the room. We have to kind of fast track this meeting, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Can we start with the roll call, please?
The invocation.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance first, sorry.
Our merciful Creator, your hand is open wide to satisfy the needs of every living creature. Make us thankful for your loving providence and grant that we, remembering the account that we must one day give, may be faithful stewards of your good gifts. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we'll proceed with the roll call.
Councilman Smith, Commissioner Oakley, Commissioner Moore,
Here.
Commissioner Starkey,
Here.
Commissioner Wells, Commissioner Mariano,
Here.
Mayor Tremblay,
Will Dittmer for Mayor Tremblay.
thank you, and Mayor Hernandez,
Here.
and Councilman Jeff Starkey.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to call for public input, we have an announcement by Terry Titos. Is Terry here?
I guess Terry's not here right now.
Manny, would you like to do the announcement, or you want to just hold off?
So I guess Terry had prepared a summary to kind of introduce our new MPO director. I'm just going to introduce him, Mr. Ronnie Blackshear. May want to say a couple of words to you.
Good morning, board members. For the record, Ronnie Blackshear, the new MPO Executive Director. Just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to come and represent Pasco County. I'm sorry. And my wife told me that, she said, you'll probably mess up when you do that, so I apologize for that. But
We'll forgive you.
I'm a 16-year resident of Pasco County. I've been here for 16 years and worked at Polk. And prior to that, I was at Hillsborough. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, welcome.
Welcome.
Okay, we're going to move on to call for public input. If anyone in the public would like to make comments to the MPO board for items that are not currently on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Yes, sir, come on up.
Good morning, Rob Park. I live at 9614 Aaron Cutoff. My comments will not address any item on today's agenda, but should address future planning to exclude Aaron Cutoff as a throughfare. In Ms. Starkey's words, I want to get it on the record. On Tuesday night, March 3rd, a vehicle left the road, Aaron Cutoff, taking out the entire fence line of a residence. It continued rolling over numerous times across the road through another fence before coming to a rest. All this within 75 feet of somebody's residence, a couple hundred feet from my house. Had this happened in front of my house, I've got a deep ditch and there's trees, the outcome might have been different. The man walked away. Yesterday morning, a vehicle left the road. Again, Aaron Cutoff sliced through a power line. We've got power lines dangling. Traffic's being diverted. According to an email reply that I got to me from the Transportation Department, Aaron Cutoff is being used as a shortcut. Aaron Cutoff is classified as a collector road and is not supposed to be used for this purpose. You can Google the definition of a collector road. In the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 7, the Transportation Element, Technical Support Document on page 20, it reads that collectors serve as connecting links between local streets and arterials between neighborhoods. Collectors do not form a continuous network and are generally discouraging through traffic. And the fact that the recent repaving of Aaron Cutoff and the widening of the corners has exponentially raised the amount of traffic and truck traffic through there. It's just wrong. And I'd like to see that the Planning Commission eliminate Aaron Cutoff from being a throughfare. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure what he was referring to me, but Aaron Cutoff is a very important part of our road network, and it's a public road, and
I use it, and I'm not, I don't know how you close it, but maybe it needs to be an arterial and not a collector. Maybe we need to elevate the name of it, but certainly we're going to keep Aaron Cutoff as an important part of our road grid system.
Commissioner Mariano?
Yeah, and I think it's good that we actually made it safer. If there's other safety improvements we can do, we should look at that.
Yeah, definitely, and I just had a meeting on safety this morning, so.
Mr. Chairman, Nectarios Pitos, Planning and Development Department, Pasco County. Aaron Cutoff is a collector road. It's essentially serving its purpose, which is collecting all the traffic from the subdivisions that are run along Aaron Cutoff and feed that traffic into the arterials, which is US 41 on the one end and State Road 52 on the other. So it's doing the job that a collector is supposed to be doing, which is feeding the arterials.
Thank you very much. And I should have made this announcement earlier, just so everyone's aware, we're going to try to fast track this meeting to get through it as quickly as possible. So another meeting being held shortly after. We'll move on next to approval of meeting minutes from February 13th.
Move approval.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Move on to MPO Advisory Committee reports. Citizens Advisory Committee.
And just for the record, I'm Sandy Grays, I'm Vice Chairman. The MPO CAC met on Wednesday, March 4th, 2020 in Land O'Lakes with a quorum present. We had a new member representing Commissioner Mike Wells' district, and thank you very much, Mike, for sending that person. There was discussion on funding for the US 19 bridge underpass. It was understood that both cities, Newport Richey and Port Richey, will help with the funding, and questions were also about the federal funding. Action items, the CAC voted to extend the Tyndale Oliver contract for the 2045 long-range transportation plan, congestion management process at no additional cost to the county. We reviewed the Resilience Tampa Bay Transportation Pilot. However, it was tabled with no opinion until our committee could take more time to actually review the information that was presented and the additional link that was provided us. There were no status reports. There was a discussion on road line improvements at Grand Boulevard and Gray Street and Elfers, and Prospect Road and Clinton Road. Our roundtable discussions were members of the CAC asked that the county's legislative representative, particularly Ralph Lair, be invited to our next meeting for an update. There was discussion on developers' resistance going back to impact fees as compared with today's mobility fees. And another concern was the flow of traffic on 52 and 41, where it was noted that the turn lane extension and road widening had shortened delays considerably, and I went through there today and it was quite nice. There was mention made about the median improvements in Lutz, Hillsborough, and the status on the median improvements on US 41, which I know Commissioner Moore worked on last year. Other business, Manny encouraged CAC representation to attend upcoming events. There was a TMA leadership meeting in Lutz and a T-BARTA charrette in Wesley Chapel, and I think those were attended. Our next CAC meeting will be April 1st in Wesley Chapel. And did I say our last meeting was in Land O'Lakes? So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions?
I do have a question. Do you know how the charrette went yesterday?
I wasn't able to attend the charrette, but Manny said it was well attended, and
Great.
if you want him to speak
well
on that.
attended by CAC members, MPO staff. The room was full of people.
Excellent.
I didn't go yesterday. You have me here today. So
Okay.
only so much MPO I can do.
Thank you very much. Move on to BPAC, Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Dr. Stovall.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We last met, it's hot today. We last met on February 25th. You have our agenda in your packet. We talked about Vision Zero and width standards for bike trails in the county. Had a good discussion. We had kind of a surprise member of the public who was a person who had been walking on Starkey Trail and hit by a bicycle, not cold, broken arm. And so the good news there was the person from our parks that is responsible for that part of that trail was there, and they got to talk. And so I think they're going to work out something. We talked about perhaps more signage for bicyclists because, sometimes they're working hard and may have their head down, and we surmise that may have been what happened at that time. But that was an interesting, unusual thing in our meeting. An exciting thing is, our county is really part of now the Florida Coast to Coast Trail. The last portion has been finished, but we haven't had the grand opening yet, but we will. The Starkey Gap is coming up in April, right?
April 15th?
And so that's going to coincide with the meeting of the Greenways Council for the state. And so good for us, we're going to get a little moment in the spotlight. And even better for bicyclists, they can ride now from our county all the way to Cocoa Beach. And last I heard, the coast to coast is like 80+% finished, so they're looking at pretty soon getting that totally done. Good thing. We had, for the first time that I've been aware of, we had a BPAC roundtable as part of the TMA last week. Unfortunately, I was out of town, so I didn't get to go, but I know we had several BPAC members that did go, so that's a good thing. And then the last thing I'll say about bicycles is Tuesday night at the Dade City Commission, they declared March Bicycle Month in Dade City, so it's a wonderful thing for us. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you very much. We will then move on to action items. 2045 LRTP and congestion management process. Time extension request, Manny?
Right, so the original scope was to end April 30th. We're just extending it for 2 months. There's no change to the scope or fee to do the project. One of the reasons why we're kind of extending it for 2 months is that the MPO, we didn't release the notice to proceed in time, and then consequently they didn't get started in time. We're just extending it to June, that's all.
Manny, I sent you an email this morning, and I talked to Dan Biles this morning. I received yet another email about the congestion of the Trinity East Lake corridor.
Right.
And so I realize that's kind of not in our hands, that's in the Pinellas County's hands. But I'm hoping that at the very least, we can get someone to look at the signalization there and make some suggestions to Pinellas County. So
Yeah,
I've been trying for a couple years now.
I kind of figured they meant Trinity and Eastlake because he didn't mention Trinity.
Well, the backup is very large at Trinity and Eastlake, but I think if you look at it, this is what other people have told me, it's from the backup at Eastlake and Keystone causes a backup at Trinity and Eastlake. So both intersections need timing reviews.
I will, for one, contact my counterparts in Pinellas County because the intersection falls in their county.
Both of them are,
and
yeah.
See what they
Great.
do.
I have talked to their commissioner, and I have talked to their county administrator, but no one has, I think, sat down and made some concrete efforts to try and improve anything yet, so.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this action item? No, bring it back to the board. Rule.
Second.
There's a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Action item B is Resilient Tampa Bay Transportation Pilot Project. Tania is going to introduce Karen with the Cambridge Systematic.
Good morning, Board. Tania Gorman, Pasco MPO. Right now, this past few months, we collaborated with Hillsborough MPO, Pasco and Pinellas. I'm sorry.
Can we turn that volume down a little bit?
No.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, neither do I. Testing.
Still loud.
I'll step away. Hopefully, man.
Try it now. Go ahead and try it.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Is that better?
No.
I'll just step away. Maybe.
Yeah, go ahead, keep talking.
Okay. All right. Good morning, Board. Hillsborough MPO and the Hillsborough MPO in collaboration with the Pasco and Pinellas MPO completed a resilience study over the last 18 months. And today we have Karen Koliski, one of the consultants with us, to present the findings. We're asking the board to review and approve her study. Thank you.
Thanks, Tania. I'm a little quieter, so maybe that'll help. As Tania said, this was a federal highway project, pilot project with funding in the reliability and durability series of pilots. It was designed to help do a vulnerability assessment for the region, following up on one that Hillsborough had done for its own. I'm going to go quickly through this. I know you're fast-tracking. Just a reminder that Tampa Bay, the region, always pops as one of the most vulnerable in the country when it comes to extreme weather events and climate trends. It's second largest population in Florida, over 1,000 miles of coastline, and 58% of the population in flood zone areas. The vulnerability assessment this round was to help incorporate information into the long-range transportation plan. So it obviously was only transportation focused. But it was also a lot of coordination with the emergency management and hazard reduction groups throughout the region. There were 11 pilot studies that I mentioned in that grant, Tampa Bay again, and then of interest, just so you know, is even the naval facilities are looking at their bridges. While it's important to look at resilience in and of itself, there was also a requirement through the FAST Act to look at reliability and resilience for long-range transportation plans. The stakeholder participation for this is we've been using the One Bay Resilient Communities Working Group as kind of the steering committee and vetting committee for the report as we've gone through it. And then the 3 MPOs as well as the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council have taken this information to their committees and groups as well. So there were 3 components to the study. There was a vulnerability assessment. Then we prepared an adaptation toolbox to help identify strategies to overcome potential vulnerabilities. And the third piece was econometrics. I'm going to quickly go through those 3 pieces. The vulnerability study looked at a full suite of storm surge, sea level rise, and then precipitation events, looking in the 2045 horizon because of the match with the long-range transportation plans. We settled on 2 moderate high type of scenarios to do additional analysis on, and that was the Cat 3 high storm and the 9 inches of precipitation in one day. The precipitation is getting more intense and heavier as some of the heating trends continue, so that was where that one came from. I know you have these in your packet, but just to give you a hint at what Newport Richey could look like now, and then with the Category 3 storm and high sea level rise, the places that might be inundated.
I'll have to use my boat to get anywhere.
The next set of maps also provide similar information. We wanted to, at the get-go, always start prioritizing which facilities were more vulnerable and which ones were also more critical. So these are the sets of maps that address that. The one on the left is from the storm surge, and the one on the right is from the precipitation. Then we also looked at it from a regional and the individual county perspective. Over a quarter of all the roads would be in the region would be impacted by storm surge and sea level rise, and primarily Pinellas is impacted by that. For Pasco, the impact is on the order of 13–14% for a hurricane scenario, and about 12% for the rain scenario in terms of the center lane miles. The second part was to prepare a adaptation strategy toolbox. This toolbox looks at everything from vegetation to help stabilize shoulders to delaying the impacts of inundation by doing more stormwater type of and drainage solutions, to making sure a facility stays after if it gets inundated, that it can recover quickly. The longer a road stays flooded, the more likely the base can get soggy, and when the water recedes, it washes out. And then, of course, raising the elevation of a road, which has the impacts of also looking at the side roads attached to it. To be able to do the cost estimating, we wanted to come up with per mile, per unit cost estimates, and we looked at at 6 representative projects to do that, 2 in each of the counties. And so for Pasco, that was US 19 and State Road 54, excuse me. And those were both quite lengthy corridors, and you can see the different strategies we look for them and the potential price, costs associated with each. Just real quickly, like I mentioned, some of the items in the toolbox, the raising the profile, hardening the base, and then, of course, drainage. There are also some natural solutions in terms of beach nourishment and natural coastlines, bioswales. We looked at, just from the econometric piece, this was the third component that was in the report. This identified, looking at the highly critical and highly vulnerable areas, the economic impact should those facilities be compromised in some way or out of service due to flooding or loss of service in some way. So obviously the longer, the blue piece, the dark blue piece at the bottom is reflective of the actual direct impact from those facilities. And so you can see the longer those facilities stay out of service, the more the economic impact. The next piece on top, I mean, the dark blue is the storm surge, the light blue is the additional for 9 inches of precipitation, and then the green on top is replacement costs. So if you lost those facilities and needed to rebuild them, that's the cost that would be associated with them. In terms of implementation best practices, different agencies and organizations are dealing with them differently. Most state DOTs and MPOs are taking an asset management approach. They're looking at it systematically and including identifying the vulnerabilities, which this report helps do, and then they're incorporating those potential enhancements as life cycle replacements for when maintenance and rehabilitation is done in the future. Many local governments, on the other hand, are taking an asset type approach. They're looking at it from, how is their stormwater doing, how backflow culverts for sunny day floods, flooding and things like that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and we ask that you accept the report.
Any questions? No?
Commissioner, I just have one statement, if you don't mind.
Yes.
And this goes back to what we talked about at our commission meeting Tuesday, and we were told this is to be brought ahead. Again, with so many agencies, cities, counties doing these resiliency studies, I just want to make sure, obviously, that we're on the same page. We're communicating with other counties, surrounding counties, cities and such. I take it you're communicating with our planning department. Has that happened yet? Yeah? Okay.
I would assume so.
Yeah, again, I appreciate all this. I just want to make sure that, again, we're communicating. And again, I mentioned this Tuesday, sometimes I get a little, not at us, but frustrated when we have multiple agencies, multiple counties doing the same studies. I just want to make sure we can all get together so we can try to be on the same page during this process. Obviously, great information. I would also ask probably you or the team to make sure you're getting this to our cities, our coastal cities, Port Richey, Newport Richey too, so their team can obviously be involved throughout the process as well. Again, communication's key when we're doing this.
Absolutely, and that's sort of why we did the full suite of scenarios, so that the local governments and other agencies could use whatever they wanted. So it's all about
No,
data
and again,
sharing.
like I said, I do appreciate that. Again, when we're putting money towards this, you got the regional planning councils, you have the other cities, Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, others that are, I would say, in our region. Again, if we can just pool our resources together, it could be actually cost savings too for the citizens and the taxpayers.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mariano?
Yes, and she had presented at the Regional Planning Council as well, so good presentation.
So that's good enough.
At that meeting, we also decided that the council is going to have its next resiliency meeting on June of next year, so we'll be following through that as well.
The big
So-
one. You mean the
The
big
big one,
regional?
yes, the big summit. So I think it might be helpful if there's the data that you've got here, and if there's any down-to-the-ground studies that actually show the arterials, et cetera, that we're going to look at for roads. If there's an effect, we can actually take a look at our local roads, which may be most in danger. If we can get down to that ground level, that might be helpful as well. Thank you.
One question. So I'm on the MPO website, and I've gone to the agendas and videos, and the only way I can download this agenda on my iPad is a PDF, so I cannot pull up her report. So how do we have on our agenda, not the PDF, but the link, so that we can, and citizens can pull up background material?
I thought we could, because if you click on there, you should.
No, there's no, yeah, it says most recent agenda. So I'm at MPO board meeting, and I hit most recent agenda, and it's a PDF.
Right, within
And there's no links in it.
If you go to the agenda item, Commissioner, you should be able to see this, and there's.
I see it, but I'm clicking on it, and
Tania, can you hit the
Yeah,
link?
We're on it now.
we're on it now.
and you've been able to,
It's only PDF. You're trying to get to the Sire format? So
It
if you
must
click on
not
that-
be.
Okay, do you see what I'm doing?
I see what
Am I
she's
doing something wrong?
I'm wondering if it's not,
It's
if it's
not
not
a-
mobile ready,
Mobile.
like for like mobile, because this is an iPad.
Maybe,
Okay.
let me see it.
I had this problem at our TMA meeting, too,
Yeah,
actually. I
I
couldn't
did
pull up.
use it, and it went to the report.
Well, you can see there's
You're on a
there's
computer,
there's
though.
no
She's on the-
hyperlinks.
Yeah. Well, can I ask, while we're looking at this, one more thing? Just a statement too, or I guess a question. When will the report actually be finalized? Because if you look at the report that was given to us, there's multiple places that says error reference source not found. I think that's pages 3 through 21. No, actually, page 321, 427, 432, and 452. It says error reference not found.
Yeah, we are in the process of finalizing it with Federal Highway, and that should be done by the end of April.
End of April,
Yeah,
okay.
so those errors are from links to the figures.
Okay, so those will be corrected, and then we'll have this posted on our website for the public to see.
We'll put it on the MPO website.
Okay, once it's finalized. Okay.
Is there any input from the public on this agenda item? Action item? No? Mr. Starkey, do you have?
I had seen some other maps that came, I think, from a result of your study that showed what happened on the US 19 as a result. So this one was with a Category 3, 9-inch rain event, but there were some data for some other storms. Can I get those maps and that data sent to me? And, Commissioner Mariano, that's a concern for us with the 19 quarter, and Jeff, that's.
Maybe you could send them to everyone on the board.
Yeah. I don't know what the solution is. I saw the price tag of 136 million. I think that's what it was for 19.
And that's why we did two versions for 19. One was a raise the road, and another one was a little bit more cost effective.
Thanks.
So
Yeah, so it's a lot of money, and
it is.
I'm interested to hear what the group says next steps are, so.
So right now, we're just approving the study, correct? There's nothing else. We have a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
So first and a second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign? Thank you very much for your presentation. Kurt, are you ready for your Pasco County Public Transportation reports and updates?
Good morning, all. Kurt Scheibel, Director, PCBT. Sorry, I've been fighting a sinus infection. Just want to let you know, speaking of infections, we are up in our game on cleaning the buses and making sure that we're wiping things down and so forth. I'm looking at all kinds of different options following the recommendations from the CDC and various other locations to make sure that we're helping contain as best we can the spread of germs and the the virus. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. I was just reading it. Thank you, coronavirus. Thank you. I was just reading about some more things that have come out. So we are working on that. We already had a bunch of basic training in place for our drivers because and in things that they would do normally to do. And we're just upping our game, working on reinforcing some of those things, giving them more supplies to wipe down things, and then working on cleaning our buses even more frequently, especially the insides, wiping down the various components of the bus, because as you know, that one bus rail that's right there when you walk in, a lot of people grab that, making sure we give them like Clorox wipes, so forth, to wipe that down. So we are working on that and doing the best we can to help contain that. I know in expeditionary or moving this along quickly. That's about all I have for today. Is there any questions from anybody?
Just real quick, regarding the germs on the buses, do
Yeah.
we currently have hand sanitizers on the buses? We do?
We've had that since I've been here. Also, the drivers have access to gloves, so they can take a set of gloves with them, and they can put them on when they need to and take them off. And we also tell them to wipe down the steering wheel and to wipe down that bar and the fare box top where people put stuff in and put their hands on and so forth like that on a routine basis. And we're just reinforcing that during both change outs and shift starts and ends, that, hey, go wash your hands now, make sure you're doing stuff like that to protect yourself.
Thank you, Kurt. Any questions, Kurt?
One last thing, we're still on track for the Shady Hills. The buses should be delivered at the end of next month. So in May, I should have some good pictures for you for some brand-new buses that we got.
Awesome.
Thanks.
You, Kurt. So we're going to move on to status reports, presentations, and updates. First is T-BARTA Regional Rapid Transit Study Update with Brian Cesaro. Welcome, Brian.
Actually, Brian's in the audience, so I'd like to recognize Brian Passaro from T-BARTA. He is the project manager for the Regional Rapid Transit Project. I am the consultant project manager for the same project, and I'm here to give you a quick update on that. So we'll go ahead and get your name, please. Oh, sorry, Scott Pringle with WSP. My apologies. So I do have a quick video, if you guys wouldn't mind help making sure to play that. It's about 1.5 minutes, and it gives you a quick flavor of the things that we're looking at within this project.
It's just like the traffic, it stops.
That's what we're dealing with, yeah.
That looks like a train right there.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, things have advanced quite a bit in transit over the past couple of years.
Nice.
So it kind of gives you a quick flavor of the things that we're looking at within the Regional Rapid Transit Project. This is the next phase of the Regional Transit Feasibility Plan. It was an earlier planning phase, about 2.5 years long. And the goal of the project is to provide that modern mobility that is safe, reliable, convenient, fast. We're talking about something that comes every 10 minutes, something that's available all day long. It's using the I-275-75 corridor. It's about a 41-mile corridor connecting all the way from St. Pete through Gateway, West Shore, Tampa, USF, and up into Pasco County. And it's regional in nature. So we're really looking at taking people longer distances and making those good connections to local transit like you have here in Pasco County. We've started last summer, and we're looking to wrap up this portion of the study next year. We have 5 major milestones identified here. One of the first things we did, though, is we heard a number of questions coming from the community during the planning phase. You know, we had 21 stations recommended. We had a lot of questions. Do we need that many stations? What are our priorities? We also had a number of questions about, we had a recommendation coming out of the planning phase, which I'll show you in a minute, that had different approaches to the interstate corridor, some dedicated and some using some other options. And I got a lot of questions about, you know, should it be dedicated throughout the corridor, and what are the pros and cons of that? that. So we're looking at those things right now as part of this PD&E study. So as I mentioned, stations were a concern. One of the first things we did is we met with a number of different stakeholders and staff to really get an understanding of those 21 stations, including planning staff from Pasco County and PCPT were integral in the conversation. And what we ended up coming forward with is 13 stations out of that original 21 that were the stations that are meeting the needs of those communities, that had a light footprint when it came to impacts to the environment or community resources, and really fit the nature and really had the demand that we're looking for is for that regional service. So you can see them listed here on the screen in front of you. Starting up top, the most important for this board, we're looking at a station at the interchange of State Route 54, as well as a station at State Route 56. The only difference in colors between the two icons that you see on the map is that State Route 54 is a station to move forward, but State Route 56 is what we're calling an intermodal center. So the Department of Transportation has a parallel effort, and they're evaluating an intermodal center, which is a significant investment in one center that can bring together a number of different modes. So as you can see, there's several intermodal centers really at our core destinations. Like, for example, here in Pasco, Wesley Chapel, downtown Tampa, downtown St. Pete, Gateway, and West Shore, and the alike. So after identifying those 13 stations to move forward, we then began tackling that question about how much of the corridor should be dedicated. There's a couple of definitions quickly I want to just hit on before I get into those alternatives that we're evaluating. As anything in life, there are a number of different ways to approach any solution. Even with bus rapid transit, there are a number of different kind of approaches. One is called bus on shoulder. This is where the BRT vehicle can move into a shoulder when traffic is slow, when there's congestion, when speeds are on the general traffic lanes are less than 35 miles per hour. However, that is not considered, in the eyes of the Federal Transit Agency, a dedicated lane. So you're not going to be competitive for that federal grant dollars. But it's a benefit to transit. It's an option. We also have listed here what we call business access and transit lanes. We recognize this because right now in Pinellas County, they're in final design on the Central Avenue BRT. We're hoping to actually utilize what they're proposing for downtown St. Petersburg, and it'll become part of our connectivity to St. Pete to the larger regional network. What we're aspiring to, though, in this project is what we call freeway dedicated lanes. So this is relatively similar to the bus on shoulder concept, where we're possibly using either an inside or an outside shoulder of the interstate, modernizing it, maximizing the assets that we already have there today. But the difference between bus on shoulder and a dedicated lane is that dedicated lane is there and available to transit all day long. It's not required. It doesn't have any stipulation or requirements to the general speeds. On the rest of the interstate, it's there, it's available, and that is competitive for federal grant dollars, because as you would imagine, if the Federal Transit Agency is awarding you grant dollars, they want to make sure that that investment is being used efficiently for the sole use of transit. So that's where this BRT concept aligns with that federal grant program. So these are some of the alternatives. Of course, we have a baseline that we're starting off with. You can see here in the orange, that's that bus on shoulder concept. This really represents the improvements that are being built into the TB Next program that the Department of Transportation is looking at. So it's a great benefit to transit. It's a good starting point for us. However, as I mentioned before, we're really aspiring to those dedicated lanes.
Can I stop you, Chairman Starkey?
Commissioner Moore.
Thank you. So, you know, the conversations we've had, you know, I started with this and when I first got elected, when this was brought to us, and you were in the room, we were down off West Shore.
Yes.
That day. And I know we've had discussions as MPO and as a Board of County Commissioners, is that we want to continue to be supportive, but for us to obviously continue to be supportive, we want a dedicated lane that comes into Pasco County.
Yes, sir.
So what I'm seeing here still is a blue line that says operates in mixed traffic. And again, considering that we are the fastest growing county in the Tampa Bay region, will continue to be for a long time, and knowing that the traffic does stack on 75, we hope that gets better. We will it will get better. Once the diverging diamond's done, we add another interchange. But at the same time, with the amount of traffic coming through, we have to have a dedicated lane. You know, I've talked to Ray Comans and others about this too, and we sat in a group with I think a lot of us did, with a large group of business leaders throughout the Tampa Bay region, and they're in agreement with that. So for us to continue, I'll speak for myself. How about this? For me to continue to be supportive of this like I've been, there has to be a dedicated lane, or I could very well pull my support.
Understood. So let me draw your attention to alternatives 3 and 5.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page, because we've had this discussion many, many times.
Well, and that, like I mentioned before, that came up quite a bit during the planning phase. So, you know, we've got these alternatives. We're evaluating each one of those components to make sure we understand the pros and cons. So, like I said, this is just our starting point. This is the recommendation coming out of the planning phase. Commissioners, like you mentioned, we are showing that mixed traffic into Pasco County. As you indicated, you know, and not only coming from this board, but we heard it from the public too. You know, what if we got the dedicated lane up to Pasco? So alternative 3 does just that. It makes that connection dedicated all the way from USF into Pasco County, which actually helps us with our overall percentage of dedicated, because we do have to be at least 50% to be competitive for those federal grant dollars. The addition of the Pasco piece gets us up to 80%, so well above that mark, so that's a good thing. We also, similar to that aspect in Pasco between Hillsborough and Pasco, a lot of questions about the Howard Franklin Bridge too. So we also have an alternative that looks at the pros and cons of having a dedicated lane across the bay, across the Howard Franklin Bridge, so we can understand the cost implications of that, the performance improvements of that scenario. And then number 5 actually is looking at dedicated along the entire corridor. So that includes filling the gap in the Howard Franklin Bridge, and also, as you mentioned, Commissioner, filling the gap for Pasco County. So these are the alternatives that we're looking at right now. We've spent quite a bit of time with the Department of Transportation, understanding exactly what their plans are for TB Next. And we feel we've got some really great design solutions to fit within that program. And we've made some great strides over the last couple weeks and had some good advances even as of yesterday. So we're moving these alternatives forward as we move forward with the project. Which is defining the alignment. So our next step is, okay, in those portions we've got a dedicated lane, what are we talking about? Are we talking the inside shoulder? Are we talking the outside shoulder? You know, when we look at the inside shoulder, what we're realizing is it helps us from a speed perspective, operations perspective. We have additional costs to get to a station that might not be in the interstate, that might be down into the neighborhood. Whereas outside, we can get better access to the neighborhoods, but we have to worry about cars getting in and off out of the interchanges. So beyond the alignment conversation that we're focused on right now, we're continuing to evaluate the stations. We did have our station charrette for State Route 54 yesterday. As Manny indicated, it was very well attended. I was very pleased. I had a participant even say that it was one of the best charrettes she'd ever seen. Awesome. So I was very happy with that. And we got some really amazing input, because we actually asked everyone at each table. We gave them a fictionary budget, and they had to work within their means and actually design the station that they thought best suited that community in State Route 54, and tell us approximately where they think the station should be located. Got some really great input about the groves and some changes that are occurring there and some opportunities that are occurring there as far as a potential station placement, so that was extremely helpful. Had some really good conversations about parking and the trade-offs of parking, enclosures, complete streets, treatments, getting into the station, so it was very productive. So we're going to continue moving forward. We are coming to the T-BARTA board in May to identify our recommended alternative, which will be one of those 5 that I just indicated. And at that point, we will take that recommended alternative into the environmental assessment. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thank you. Any questions or concerns, Mr. Mayor?
I'm just excited we're moving forward with the regional plan.
We are, yes, we are. After lots of work.
I think Commissioner Moore hit it on the head. Options 3 and 5 look like the best, so.
Understood.
Express all the way.
Understood.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. We're going to move on to the Micro Transit Virtual Simulation Transportation Planning Study. Mr. Engel.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and MPO board members. I'm excited to be here today because we're giving you a barbell presentation. We just went on the bus rapid transit side for regional connectivity. And now I'd like to talk to you about some local connectivity enhancements that I think will be very exciting to consider and also to understand. I am with the Office of Economic Growth, and I don't normally appear here in front of a transportation board, but the interrelationship between transportation and economic growth are significant. And from what I've learned being here in the county for about a year and a half, is that transportation's is a question for a lot of companies considering coming here to Pasco County because of trends in manufacturing, and about 70% of our pipeline now is manufacturers. Artificial intelligence and technology is taking over a lot of the hard pushing in factories and assembly facilities. And the type of labor that they're looking for is semi-skilled and skilled. So if you look at the county holistically, you see that there's a substantial semi-skilled and unskilled labor pool on the west side of the county, but our job creation and activities are in the southern part of the county out to the east. So one of the big questions is how can we get people to work in an efficient, effective, reasonable manner and back and forth. The second area is our developers. I've worked very extensively with Metro and with Avalon Park, which is a new innovative smart growth community on the east side of the county, and also the Moffett facility that's hopefully going to be coming in here soon. And they all are pushing for exploiting technology and enhancing our transportation offering on the public sector. So I was heartened to see in the Transportation Development Plan that the board approved about a year and a half ago that microtransit was a feature and it's an unfunded project, but a consideration by the MPO board and our transit agency. And I have a background in transportation planning. Before coming here, I worked in St. Lucie County, and we worked on this microtransit initiative. And what microtransit is using technology of real-time mobile trip reservations and vehicle routing technology. You can provide a public transportation offering to satiate the first and last mile. So I'm just going to quickly go through my slide presentation, and I'll take it very quickly. So it's a demand response system. It combines TNCs, that's Uber and Lyft, with traditional public transit, and it offers very flexible stop-to-stop and first and last mile service within a zone, and I'll explain what a zone is and how it works. It supports the existing fixed route, which is very critical. Microtransit doesn't work on its own. It needs to be integrated into the existing transportation system, and kind of frames, we have a very good bus system and paratransit system, but if we start focusing on first and last mile and regional connectivity, it enhances what we do and how we integrate our community. The common uses of microtransit, it increases access, it provides a high level of equity in our system. It's fully scalable to any particular area of the county. If it doesn't work in one area, it can move to the other, and I'll explain why in a second. It's a same-day reservation system. The FTA allows flexibility with same-day reservations. So the county has the ability to work with the agency and charge different types of fares. It doesn't have to be on the same fare structure as paratransit and fixed route. And it's delivered through the cloud, so in the event that you don't like the provider, you just change the provider and you still have a cloud system. So it doesn't require a large capital outlay and a commitment by the county to any particular company. So we have two quick microtransit TV news articles, if you could post the first one. It just gives you an idea of the types of variation and scale that we can have.
But it's free. The idea behind a new program in Port St. Lucie and St. Lucie County.
And then pull down the other presentation.
While they're setting it up, St. Lucie County received a service development grant to undertake a pilot for microtransit, but they also did a computer simulation of the pilot before it was undertaken to make sure it was right-sized and efficient.
WPTV News Channel 5's John Shaman has more on how you might get to take advantage of this service.
Malcolm Harris Gowdy relies on others to get to work and church.
If I didn't have transportation right now, I would be just sitting at home doing nothing.
He just learned of a new program in Port St. Lucie to make it easier for him to get around. Through the Treasure Coast Connector, the city and county have partnered with a microtransit technology company, Transloc, for a new rideshare program.
Really easy to use. All you would have to do is download the Transloc app
Essentially, it's a public Uber service where someone could hail a ride from the palm of their hand.
St. Lucie County Transit Manager Mariah Deacle says the program started in December for residents in the southwestern part of the city.
What we're encouraging is that connection to the fixed route bus stop, so then folks can traverse the entire county.
If it's successful, one goal of this year-long pilot project is to bring full-time bus service to that part of the city.
It actually gives you a live ETA, like it'll tell you like when it's arriving here.
The average wait time is about 23 minutes. I hailed a ride and Marisol Whitehead picked me up in 20. She says what started as 2 riders a day for her is now up to 20 with a number of regular passengers and routes.
That's what people love because it's from the city. That whoever comes and pick them up is somebody that is like a professional.
We have the major activity centers here, larger employers in the Tradition area. So we are connecting people to their jobs. It's an essential component of economic development.
Deacle says you can't put bus stops on every corner, so they're always looking for ways to get people closer to where they need to be. In Port St. Lucie, John Shainman, WPTV, News Channel 5.
Those are nice little landscape medians.
And the next one is just a different scale and service in St. Pete's Beach, just to show you the different variations in vehicle types.
Is it already on there?
Go down. That one.
I didn't know you had it.
There's a new, fun, eco-friendly way to get around the Pasco Grill area of St. Pete Beach.
All right, maybe we'll just move on. Could you just put up the slideshow again, please?
No, we've lost all video.
All right.
With the freebie.
The money we saved on the PSDA buses, we pay for these guys, and they don't have to tip them. You know, there's no tipping allowed.
The freebie's also pet-friendly. We took a ride with city leaders in the electric vehicle. The route begins at the Don Cesar Hotel and goes south to the tip of Pasco Grill.
So anywhere within that location, you can ride, get picked up by requesting on the app.
great
If you see a
for,
freebie that's available, you can
Well, for Wiregrass,
tourism.
Avalon, and some of the MPUDs and
Yeah.
mixed-use developments. And you can see it just circulating through the Moffett project in 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So, Chairman Starkey?
Commissioner Moore.
So, something similar to, I think they're more private down in Sarasota, around Siesta Key.
Yeah, they have that.
How's that, the free rides, which we've done that many a times when we've stayed down there too.
Well, the exciting thing is that we could brand different areas of the county with their own microtransit service. You have the flexibility of charging fares according to the demographics. You can effectively get people to work where they're not, having to deal with fixed route connections. And it really, if you really think of the return on investment, it's very substantial.
It keeps going out.
Keeps going out.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you.
We had the IT folks here this morning, and there's nothing we can do, just lose the signal.
Well, let me just, what is microtransit essentially? They're publicly delivered vans. Drivers typically are young seniors who are retired doing part-time work, so they're part of their neighborhoods that they're servicing. You can obtain and hail through the technology local trips within your transportation zone, which is designed through data, and then it'll transport people in that zone locally using the microtransit. If you want to leave that zone, it will transport you directly into the fixed route. So it feeds the fixed route system, and then also in case studies throughout the United States, there's some agencies that are doubling their ridership, so your revenue pool and your service pool is expanded enormously. Now, so where to start and how to do it? Well, rather than going out and buying vans and hiring people and initiating a service, there is a simulation tool that is offered through Ford Mobility Solutions, a subsidiary of Ford Motor Company, which is now a transportation company, not a passenger vehicle manufacturer anymore. And through working together with the MPO staff and also PCPT, inputting the data, designing the specs and the scope of a simulation, we'll be able to actually virtually study microtransit, how it integrates in any particular area that the MPO board were to select. and it provides output of ridership experience, of wait times and service times, so we could really scientifically construct a microtransit pilot. Microtransit pilots are very popular at FDOT and the FTA right now. In St. Lucie County, when I was there, we got a National Academy of Science grant to study microtransit. We actually got service development grant money to actually commit to help funding microtransit. And so funding's available, you can cobble together availability. And I instituted some and worked on some after-hours demand response services called Direct Connect, where people that couldn't get to a full-time job, couldn't work in their second and third shifts, couldn't get to night school, are now getting the empowerment tools to do their business and to improve their households. So it's great because the local economy goes from the household to the company. And if you could provide some vitality and assistance on both sides, it really enhances our overall community. So we reached out to Transloc. I had a relationship with them in St. Lucie County when I left, and they said that they could do a simulation with 2 simulations for Pasco County at $75,000. I said, well, I recall we were talking $30,000 at St. Lucie County. So now they revised, and they want to develop a relationship with our community. They're willing to do it for $15,000. Now, I would gladly fund that out of the Office of Economic Growth budget, but I'm not allowed to use any penny money for planning efforts. So I really need your assistance today. I need your assistance to endorse going forth the next step of the simulation and giving some consideration to how we could fund the $15,000. The return on investment is enormous, and it's not a big outlay.
Well, I would.
This is not an action item.
Oh, shoot, I was ready to support that. It's not an action item?
No, it's not listed as an action.
No, it's not an action item. This was just a presentation.
It's an
Do you need
informational
board
presentation.
direction?
Well, it would be helpful, and you know, I know that the agency, the transit agency, is interested in microtransit. So I'm just offering a next step that isn't a big step. It's an incremental step to understand how we could integrate it and undertake the pilot.
Well, I'm very supportive of this and very excited, and I'd like to see it go forward as quickly as possible. I don't know if you remember me talking about constituents in the Holiday area having to take the bus to get to the clinic. It's a 2.5-hour bus ride for the shortest time, and it gets there 5 minutes before the clinic closes. So I see this just being a great tool for especially, well, you know, in that area. And I know you're looking at different areas maybe to do a test, but I think this is great. I'd like to see it in the whole county eventually, and I would move forward with it.
Commissioner Stern, or Commissioner? Yeah, I would agree. And you and I had that conversation. I'm definitely supportive of this. And with me personally, I'm thinking more of the economic, you know, development side of things too, as we continue to grow and the county continues to grow. And we bring, I think this also, us when you're out selling, because that's what you do, obviously you're selling the county, showing the possible, companies that want to come to this area that we are offering something like this, then to know that there's obviously additional transportation opportunities for their employees would be definitely, like I said.
Well, that's very true. I mean, 40 years ago, people followed the company. Now the company are following the employees.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
labor pool is critical for competitiveness.
Yeah. So it's something, yeah.
Yeah, very
I'm
good.
supportive. So.
Commissioner Mariano, and then.
Yeah, David, I tell you, you impress me more and more every day, all the great work you do for economic development, but this idea that you brought to me a few months back, and I thought it was just the greatest thing going. I'm so glad you've got to this point to bring it forward, and like what my fellow commissioners just mentioned, I think it's a great program to move forward with, full steam ahead.
All right, thank you. So the next step is I
Yeah,
will.
one more.
Oh, sorry.
And I'll make it quick, totally concur, and I know in addition to just Dade City and the city I represent, on a larger scale with Pasco and Pinellas, the area agents, the seniors, a lot of people, even though there's our seniors, a lot of people working with them that we're actually talking about one of this unmet needs now, and this fits right into that, so it fills a whole other piece of the equation of helping to get people where they need to be, not only for their jobs, but for services that they
Well,
need.
it really does. For the ambulatory senior, they can have some spontaneity in their transportation decisions using the microtransit versus the 48-hour reservation. on the paratransit. And also, when you think about the seniors, a lot of seniors have one car, but they have another one because they need it once in a while. You don't have to take that burden on, because transportation costs for household budgets is about 17 to 22% of the dispensable household budget. So if you could help that and help the families with kids that are teenage drivers that can't get access to a family vehicle, but they can get around using microtransit, it helps the household as well as the community and our local economy.
Well, and to the point where Commissioner Starkey had said is that you get to places and you can't get there. And I think this is by accelerating that and getting them to feed into those things that would get them more timely, I think it's great in itself. So.
Thank you. So next step is I'll work collaboratively with our staff and our PCPT partners and try to come up with a solid framework to moving forward. Thank you for your time.
Don't leave yet. Sorry, one more. So, David, explain to the board, with this pilot program, the $15,000, again, what do we exactly get out of it? How many trips? I know it's...
Well, what they do is they establish 2 simulations, so we can study 2 different areas of the county.
Okay.
So it really has to be economical in the way we select it and strategic, and that's why I need the input of your planning staff and your transit agency to help me.
Okay. And then you would come back again to the MPO or the county commissioners to fund the $15,000?
Well, it's a planning study. That's all the simulation is. I think the next step would be with the planning study would be done on the MPO level.
Okay.
And then once the MPO endorses the study, once it's finished, then we move forward with the pilot, and that involves Board of County Commissioner involvement.
So David mentioned, we're going to meet with PCPT, trying to figure out where we're going to come up with this money. I mean, we have to look very closely.
Well, it sounds like you have direction from here, and you have support to move forward. I think
I'm
that's what you're
willing to
looking
do a
for,
big
right?
sell.
Right.
That's what you're looking for.
Thank you very much.
I'll buy it. Whatever you make, I'll buy.
Other business items with MPO AC Weekend Institute, March 20th to 22nd at FLC University Training Center in Orlando, and then again on April 17th through 19th, 2020. Renaissance Hotel International Plaza. If there's nothing else that the board...
Mr. Starkey, I think Terry wants to just brief you on the Cody River study, just a minute.
Okay, and then...
That's what I was going to tell you.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nectarios Pitos, Planning and Development Department. I just wanted to brief the MPO board really quick on the Cody River Trail feasibility study. We received the study yesterday from our consultants, AECOM, and we posted it on the project webpage, so it's online right now to be seen. We sent it all to the interested stakeholder list yesterday afternoon. We are planning to provide a presentation at the April meeting of the MPO board, and we do have an update memo on hand to give you a heads up on how the project has been faring. The only thing that's missing from this memo is the receipt of the feasibility study, which I'm telling you right now that we have. So
Are you going to, so we're not going to talk about it
we're not going to do a presentation on it today, but it has been circulated to the interested stakeholders.
It'll be on the agenda, an agenda item for next month then.
Yes, yes.
Can I make a couple of comments on it? Yes.
I was looking at it this morning.
I guess the city of Port Richey, Newport Richey, at one point had reached out to Senator Hooper about pulling it off the list, and we tried to get that retracted back. I guess that didn't happen.
Yeah, that's where we left off the last meeting. So.
All right, so then staff did a great job pushing it forward, working with DOT, got great to get that feasibility done and done. So it doesn't have any state funding right now. So I think before the next meeting, if you guys could work with FDOT, maybe our state legislators, to find out what can we do now to move this project forward. It would be a great place to end up with. Because we don't know I don't know what the exact ramifications of everything we've done so far are, but I think if DOT and our MPO works together, we can try to find a way to get the project funded from here.
We can talk to our partners and understand what the cost implications are of the project and how to potentially move forward in funding.
And I think it's going to be key for the city of Newport Richey and Port Richey to get right in the mix, to put all our heads together, find out how to do the right-of-ways that we need, et cetera, to keep the thing moving.
And you had reached out to Ms. Mans after the last
Yes,
meeting.
yeah, we had a good conversation.
She left the earmark on the board. She didn't retract her request?
I think by the time that had been done, had been pulled, they tried to resurrect it, but it just wasn't able to be brought back up. So now is like a time for us to all get together, find out what we can do, and let's go work together.
And I want to say again, I think I've said it before, is that for next year's session, I think, and I don't know what work needs to be done ahead of time, but for me, this is a real economic project for downtown, you know, the Port Richey, New Port Richey area, and I think we should go for a DEO grant as well, maybe in conjunction with. So make sure we go down that avenue as well.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just to note, the feasibility study cost estimates are currently indicating that for an 18-foot trail, it'll be about 3.5 million, and for a 20-foot trail, about 4.1 million. So that it gives you kind of a differential between the types of trail that we could potentially put in there. I do want to note, though, that that is maximum extent, and then we can scale back from that as needed through PD&E studies and construction plan drawings when the time comes for that. So those are going to be factors when we talk to our partners to Commissioner Mariano's request.
Commissioner Mariano.
And just, Councilman Ditmar, you're here with Catchers having property that we need. We're there looking for the Bridge Street project with availability on Bay Boulevard, I believe is up top. There's a great opportunity for you guys to get together, work with them to kind of
Right,
make it
and
all fly.
we already had, at our meeting the other night, we just discussed some of that, maybe potentials for trade-offs there with other items, so that is something that we're actively discussing.
Excellent.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much, everybody. Meeting adjourned.
All right, so Commissioner Starkey and